if you look at Africa's evolution over time, you would see that we have kind of tried to maintain the same economic models that we inherited from colonialism, which is one that has largely been about processing raw materials for export. That's the reason why African economies have not really, I would say, escaped the poverty cycle. It's the reason why, irrespective of the demographic boom that we have, demographic dividend that we have, we still have significant unemployment. So if you just look at most African countries, our biggest challenge today is unemployment, it's income inequality, and now we're all suffering from climate change and the adverse impacts of climate change. Our mandate is build the infrastructure that will enable industrialization happen on the continent. And we try to do that by focusing on specific value chains. And what we wanted to do was to have an intentional program for structural transformation, looking at specific value chains, ecosystems, and investing. Hence the partnership with Arise. The whole idea is how can we help transform African economies, ensure that we can capture and retain more value within the economies. So Gabon was the first. When we started in Gabon in 2016, it was in Gabon with 3 assets, only one was operational. And the idea was, how can you solve for industrialization? Why has industrialization not happened all these years? And what can we do to make it easier for everyone? So part of the challenge has always been getting land, getting raw materials. Essentially, you have to do everything, just for your own business. And depending on the scale, it just might not make sense. The whole idea of the Arise Integrated Industrial Platform is to have industrialization as a service. So that way you can just come and do the bits that you want. You don't have to have a plantation of timber to make furniture. You don't need to have, to build your own power plant. You don't need to do all the things that you typically would have to do. So we've structured the business in such a way that all you need to do is just come in, enter the location, and you have what you need. So we have a program for procuring raw materials. We have a program for providing logistics. We have a program providing infrastructure and even trained workforce. So it has been a very good partnership starting from that project in Gabon, where we had just one value chain, which is the timber value chain. We built the ports. We invested in the transmission wire lines that will bring in energy, invested in the industrial park itself. The most significant thing was the one-stop processing shop for all the approvals and permits required to operate within the zone. And we can see the value of that. So Gabon has increased, export by almost 4 times, created significant amount of jobs. We're not just exporting raw timber, but exporting, furniture with a showroom in Florida. You have created an ecosystem where several people within the value chain can locate. And then the ports that we built, has increased, mining output for iron ore, manganese. Generally, there's been significant increase in both GDP. I think government revenue increased from something like $5 million to $60 million. I know GDP is something about $800 million contribution, and several other things. So I think that was the beginning, and we felt that we needed to extend that across the continent because there are several other value chains, that we had seen that required intervention. So, for example, Africa imports a lot of beef, from Brazil and other parts of the world, but we have significant livestock in Chad, and from Chad we're currently exporting from Chad to Cameroon, to Gabon, and even Angola. I remember I had a meeting with the finance minister of Angola at WEF earlier in the year, she said she wanted a solution. And I know that right now we're sending them livestock to Angola. And what is important also, if you look at what is the savings in the carbon emissions, from exporting from Brazil into these countries and exporting from Chad into these neighboring African countries, I can assure you that the carbon emissions have been significantly reduced. The travel time also significantly reduced. And of course, the cost also significantly reduced, because, within the CIMA region, the same currency. So there's no foreign exchange risk, in that. If you look at the cotton value chain as well, currently cotton is mainly exported to India and Vietnam, for processing, and then export to, Europe, Africa, and the US. But with what we're doing now in the cotton value chain in Benin Republic and in Togo and in Nigeria, hopefully down the line, you would see that we can reduce the carbon emissions by between 45 to 50%. And that's from India. From Vietnam, it will be reduced by about 30 to 35%. So you can see the advantage of processing in Africa. Why? Africa has, I would say, comparative equidistance to the rest of the world. So Africa is close to America, Europe, South America, Asia. But when you move from Africa to Asia and from Asia to the rest of the world, you can see the carbon footprint along that path. And we're very happy with our investment, and the initiative of transforming cottons to t-shirts, which are now currently exported to Children's Place in the US. We are very happy with all the collaboration we have with various brands now, and we think that this can be replicated. We've also looked at how to transform silica to solar PVs. We have a project in the Republic of Congo that's focused on that. And if you understand the fact that Africa has the most significant potential for solar power in the world, we have potential for 10,000 gigawatts with less than 10 gigawatts built. It can't be that we're going to import all those solar PVs from China or Asia. We have silica, we have energy systems in Africa. We need to produce those, we need to transform the silica to PV cells so that we can harness the renewable energy that is endowed within Africa. Likewise, our cashew value chain, it also had a similar route, and with the industrial park in Benin, in Togo, and eventually in Nigeria, it will also transform, capture more value, also for soya and several other things. The big challenge we have in Africa is unemployment, and we have to handle it head-on. And handling it head-on means we need to go up the value chain. We need to start with the simple industries and go into more complex industries. Why? Because the future of the world is electrification. And Africa is endowed with significant minerals and metals, for the energy transition. And it's our opportunity to also create the industries and the jobs, that allow us to employ, the growing youth population in Africa. I don't know if I'm sure most people know this, Africa is going to have the largest workforce, by 2030, 2040, 2050. Africa is going to be over 3 billion people around that time. So it only makes sense that we are already planning today, to create the jobs that we know they need. And so now is the time for us to focus on building the industries that will employ our people. And it's also not just building the industries, it's also looking at how can we de-risk industrialization. We can de-risk industrialization by first putting in place adequate infrastructure, like I mentioned, but also building the infrastructure with local currency, so that you can reduce the foreign exchange risk, associated with imported capital, which is why we're very, for us at AFC, we're looking at, a total link. So we've invested in a company called IPRFZ with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, and the whole idea of that is to see how we can mobilize domestic capital for investment in the economy. Now that Arise wants to set up the industrial platform in Remo, we think that there's need to access local currency. And this initiative that was done several years ago can facilitate local currency for investment. We've also supported the Bank of Industry by credit enhancing their offerings and raising them capital for them to invest in local economy. This is also an opportunity for them to invest, in the industrialization of the country. We are also collaborating with the likes of African Development Bank, who have a special program for agri processing zones, and would align with them where we would be the operators as Arise, and ensure that we can all work together to capture and retain more value for the African economy. Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa. I've always said that Nigeria is $1 trillion economy, and all we need to do is to build the infrastructure for that to happen, and it will happen. If you see how the economy has grown, without any specific policy enablement, you would know the significant potential of the Nigerian economy. So Nigeria is like India 30 years ago. So all the challenges we're having now is what India had 30 years ago, even Brazil. So we don't really need to do much work. We just need to focus on how can we capture and retain more value in the country. And we do that by picking specific value chains. So like in Remo, we're looking at cassava, starch. We're looking at import substitution. We're looking at pharmaceutical production. We're looking at e-mobility. We're looking at agro-processing. So there are many value chains that we're looking at there. And the strategy is first to ensure that we can have energy in abundance and as low a price as possible, because you need energy for transformation. And the focus is to ensure that we have the right energy systems there at a competitive price that will bring down the price of whatever is manufactured. So what we're doing in Benin Republic with cotton has been done in Nigeria before. We have textile industries in Ikeja, in Kaduna, in Kano, several parts of Nigeria. Why were they not competitive? It was power, absence of power, and the cost of power. So the way forward now is to make sure that we can put in place power systems at a low price. Cotton value chain typically employs a lot of people. A lot of people will be employed in this industry, and we reduce unemployment. We hope to commission the industrial park soon, and we're going to focus on the cassava value chain, on the timber forestry value chain, import substitution in the main, and we'll get it going. We are the largest investors in Arise, and we're here. We have mobilized capital, for development finance institutions like BOI that can invest locally. They're here as well. We have IPRFZ that's here as well that can help mobilize pension and insurance savings. So we have the ecosystem, and then the market. Most importantly, the market is here. We have over 200 million people, that are all very energetic and entrepreneurial. So the linkages would easily come together for us in Nigeria. So we're very optimistic and anxious, to get this initiative going.